Well, good morning. How are you all today? This is going to be a little bit different one because I just want to share some thoughts. I was checking the comments from yesterday's video and came across one from one of our esteemed commenters and subscribers who said he'd been an Army aviator for 40-some years, clear back into Vietnam. So he's done it. And he said how he had recently driven onto Fort Bragg and his feelings when he saw the rebranding of Fort Bragg to Fort Liberty. I think Fort Hood has been renamed Fort Moore, if I'm not mistaken, after Hal Moore. And his feelings about it. We know why they're doing these things. We know that they are trying to change our history so they can direct our future the way they want it, along their little commie ways. But they're erasing a common and foundational memory that is so important, and they know that, and that's why they're doing it. And that's what makes these days sad days. And I'm not going to dwell on this, but I do want to address this. And I don't like the ones who just constantly pound about how horrible things are and how our country is going to hell. And yes, it is going to hell. I get that. But all the fist pounding and the thumping and the big talking about this doesn't change a damn thing. It's only efforts that change it. And I think that it's important to reflect on these things sometimes, if we allow them to direct us properly. I went out recently. I spent Memorial Day at the cemetery where my parents and my grandparents are buried, and I don't go out there often, but I always go out there on Memorial Day, and it's good to take a few minutes to stand there and reflect and think about the people who raised you, the people you came from, the ones who gave you the foundation on which you built your life, the ones who were always there in support, your first team, your first group, the ones you could always depend on and thought would never change. And of course, life brings change. They leave and you're left to fill the spots they once had, and that's proper. That's the way that life should be. But while you can stand there and you feel sadness at memories or the loss, the missing of the people, you can't dwell on the sadness. You can't stay in the sadness. You have to come through it and realize that sadness is simply serving a purpose to remind you of good things, good times, good people, good principles. And then you are reminded of your responsibility to carry these on, and understanding that you're there with the foundation that gave you the ability to do it. And then you leave hopefully with being recentered and directed. It's the same with our country. These are sad days. These are dangerous days. We know why they are dangerous days. But they're sad days when we think about what America used to be and what it's become. Kelly, my wife, for those of you who don't know, is 20 years younger than I am. When I would try to explain to her what America was, what my life was as a kid growing up in the 50s and the 60s, she used to think I was lying to her because it was just so different than her own experience only 20 years later. Now, 20 years may seem like a lot between married people, but it's not much in the life of a country, and so much had changed. And she even got to writing down questions to ask my brother and sister. Was it really like this? Was it really? Well, it was. America was an amazing place. A wonderful place to live. A wonderful place to grow up. You didn't see the arguments. You didn't see the problems we have today. Most people, regardless of race, religion, political party, whatever, felt pretty much the same on the basic issues. You couldn't find a parent that thought it was okay for their child to cheat in school. You didn't find people who thought that it was okay to do the things they think are fine to do today. You saw that I had to run around. I had to make an end run on that. Because I do want this to be up on YouTube. I want people to see it. It was different. And then, of course, it changed in the 60s and the 70s, and certainly as we came into the 80s. Now half the country feels that the way America was just horrible, and they want to take it in a different direction. And it's all been a part of the concerted effort by the communists. And those who don't realize that, I hope you'll study about it some more. So what are we to do with this this sadness? We have to use it to further direct us and strengthen us. Okay? By remembering an America that was wonderful to grow up in. We have to let that strengthen us in our resolve and our efforts to turn, whether this country or our own little world, around, holding to that, not giving in, to hold on to as much as we can and then try to turn it back. You know, this was the whole concept of the reversion and the revival and such. And there are those, many of my friends and many of you out there, that think that a total collapse of this country is the only thing that can give us a chance to start over again and to rebuild it the way that it was supposed to be, the way that it should be. And maybe that's true. I don't know how much longer this country can last the way it is. I don't think much longer. We will see. Collapses can take a long time, but they don't take forever. And we always, of course, have to be prepared for that. But while we're preparing for that, we have to be thinking and strengthening our children and our grandchildren to take their proper place in whatever new America will take this one's place. I think the country will crash and burn. I think it'll split. There's no way that this gets fixed. The people are just, when a half of our country thinks the other half is absolutely wrong and evil and rotten to the core, there's no fixing that. You do not compromise with evil. But we will see. I think it will fragment, and then that's going to be, it'll be horrible. But, sometimes horrible is preferable to a different horrible. This summer I'm going to be taking the kids, we will be taking our summer trip. This time we're taking our southern trip. Last year we went out through the Northwest, went up through Nebraska, South Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, Washington State, back down through, we saw all the things, it was beautiful. But this year is more meaningful. This will be an historical trip. We'll be taking the southern trip. We're going down through southern Missouri, where a lot of my family came into Missouri after the war. And the war, I mean the one in the 1860s, after they left, where they'd been burned out in Georgia and South Carolina. We'll be going across there. We're going through Tennessee, making a stop at the Hermitage east of Nashville, which was Andrew Jackson's place. From there, we'll go into Gatlinburg for a couple of days and let the kids enjoy that. Kelly and I love Gatlinburg. We'll stay up in a cabin up in the hills. The Smokies are beautiful. Reminds me a lot of the Ozarks. We'll go from there to Asheville, North Carolina, and then from there to a very special place called Abbeville, South Carolina. Some of you may know why Abbeville is special. If you've read my books, you know, because I cover it in my books, and I'm talking about it even more in the one that I'm currently writing. Abbeville is called the birthplace and the deathbed of the Confederacy. The reason is because just right there in Abbeville is a hill called Secession Hill. It's the hill where it was the location to where people came together, representatives from around South Carolina, and decided to secede from the Union. It's called the deathbed because in a mansion there, the Burt Mansion, it was where Jefferson Davis's cabinet finally convinced him that the war was lost, and they dissolved the government of the Confederate States of America. So the kids will be seeing that and getting even more of a history lesson from Dad than they usually do, and they get a lot. We will go from there down to Charleston, where my family owned a bunch of plantations. 18 plantations. Yeah, they had slaves. I don't apologize for that. It's the way it was, you know. It's history. It's the way it was. We'll be taking a tour through Middleton Place, where it was one of the branches of my family, and it's still, they'll give tours through there, and you know, it'll be a very interesting experience for the kids. Then we'll see Fort Sumter and Fort Moultrie, and I'll explain to them about how the Civil War, you know, and I say that because it wasn't a Civil War, but most people hear it, they think of it that way, where it really started. And it was started because of the North went back on their word, and Lincoln went back on his word, and you know, the first shots of that war were taken by the cadets from the Citadel. That's right. Because the North went against their agreement and they started that war by doing that. Anyway, we'll go from Charleston down to Savannah. Beautiful town. I love Savannah. Eat at the Pirates House there. And then from there down to St. Augustine. To see that historical place. And then we'll come up through Georgia, going to stop by Stone Mountain. Many of you know the significance of Stone Mountain, Georgia, to see the carving, the Confederate carving on Stone Mountain before they blow that up. Then back up through Chattanooga and across Tennessee again and back home. I think it's important to do these things. It's important to remind ourselves of our history and where we come from, because when we are forging our way ahead, our energy has to be in our efforts to better things or to prepare to withstand future challenges. But it's also important to always remind ourselves where we came from, how we got to where we are. Because when we look at that line behind us, sometimes that line is straight, sometimes that line is crooked. And it kind of describes what we can expect the line to look like that's ahead of us. Sometimes it's straight, sometimes it's not so straight. But we have to do what we can to preserve, to defend, to continue the kind of life we believe in, to raise children and grandchildren to also value those principles, and to have the strength to withstand whatever is brought their way, or to try to right the ship. So anyway, I wanted to give those thoughts, because these are sad and dangerous days, but we can't dwell on the sadness. We have to think about what Churchill said during the Blitz. He said, "These are not dark days. These are great days." Because these are the days that give us the opportunity to dig down deep inside and bring out that best part of us that will withstand what's being brought against us and come out victorious on the other side. So, I don't talk much about like this on this channel anyway, but I thought that because of what our commenter said and my immediate response that these are sad and dangerous days, that I would. So I'm going to go out and water the garden today. The garden's getting big. It takes me a long time to water it now. But I've also got to plant another, 50 squash. I got to build more mounds for all the squash and cukes and zooks and tomatoes that I brought in the other day. So my day is going to be full ahead of me. And while I do that, I am going to be thinking back about how America used to be, what it should be, what's happened to it, and how the hell we fix it. Before I leave, I should say this. I had somebody ask about t-shirts. He says, "I can't find your stuff on there." Well, you can find all my books on at our website, stonemont.us, which I'll put the link down below. All my books are there. The t-shirts will be again offered. We'll probably have them ready in a couple of weeks, and then they will be listed, and some other things will be listed on the website for all you Stonemonters. Okay? You all have a good day. Reflect on what America used to be. Reflect on what you think it should be, and renew your determination to withstand it, and to try to renew that little world that you have right around you. Improve the world around you. And I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.